Hey everyone, this is the first video in our survival story of the Sword King series. After being discharged from military service and just drifting through life, Hanbin Ryu is suddenly transported to another world. However, his guideline, the system bestowed upon him to help with his survival and growth, was filled with errors, causing him to be stuck in the tutorial stage for over 20 years. When he is finally released from this personal hell, he finds everyone has turned against otherworlders like him. Just how will this low-level, super tutorial newbie survive? As always, if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this banger story. Our story opens up on Rocky Mountain on a world called Latna. Unfortunately, our boy the MC is not having a good day. A demon dog is currently snacking on his arm. He somehow manages to push it off of him, but he has no idea what is happening. The dog jumps at him again, but this time Hanbin grabs a rock and hits it as hard as he can on its jaw. He didn't have time to grasp the situation he was in or feel surprised at the new reality he suddenly found himself in. The only thing he knew for sure was if he doesn't kill the dog first, it would kill him instead. He checks if the dog is still alive, and it still is. Although it might have a dislocated jaw, Hanbin got it good, but it limps towards him still. He takes a step back, warning the dog to not come any closer. He shouts at it, angry, asking it why it's messing with him. But just then, his guideline pops up for the first time. This is a yellow notification window that only he can see. Now, we've seen these 1,000 times from other shows like Solo Leveling and so on. It's kind of like a stats menu in a game. Anyway, the guideline identifies the dog as a demon dog. It's the lowest level monster in Latna. It possesses combat powers similar to an unarmed adult male. The guide tells him he can gain experience from defeating powerful monsters, which will in turn allow him to level up. Hanbin is confused by all of this mention of levels, combat power. He wonders if he got stuck in some kind of virtual reality or something. He never got to finish that sentence. The dog went straight for his throat while he was distracted. He wonders to himself, just when did everything start going sideways for him? He starts flashing back to his life early so we can know what the hell is going on. So if Hanbin was a lazy boy lately, he would wake up at noon every day, but we can't blame him. It's been 3 months since he was discharged from the army, and so he had nothing but time on his hands. It's funny, when he was in the army, he thought he'd be able to do anything he wanted once he became a civilian again, but the last 3 months of his life were just a dark haze. Hanbin gets on his computer, eating a bag of chips, browsing the net, but that too has gotten boring since it's all he does. This was his reality, or at least it used to be. Smoke started coming out from under his desk. He didn't notice it until it was too late. It was a lot of it, and it surrounded him and started going into his eyes and mouth as he screamed until, poof, he was gone, leaving behind only the chair he was sitting on. After that, he woke up in a blindingly bright room. He heard voices speaking. One voice was saying all suitable candidates have been accepted. Hanbin, which we will call Han, also wondered if he was dead. Another voice responded to the first voice, asking if these are all the candidates, and that they heard there was a pool of over 7 billion candidates. The first voice responds by saying it's because there was over 7 billion possible candidates that they were able to get this many. Looking around, Han sees that he's not alone. There's a bunch of people around him. He wonders who the voice is. Could it be God's voice? But it was too bright for him to see anything. Next, he hears one of the voices ordering the guidelines be transmitted to the candidates, and the other asking if that is the best way to do things. To them, it seemed a bit artificial. Han picks up on this, thinking if it's artificial, then it's not God, it's probably man-made. After some convincing, the second voice eventually begins the transmission of the guideline to the candidates. Out of nowhere, a bright light pierces Han's chest, and he screams in agony. While in pain, he's able to hear the voice saying they made a mistake. He panics, wondering what mistake was made. The voice says there's an error in the guideline upload, but it's whatever. It's only one candidate that had an error, so it should probably be fine. After this, he felt a hand pushing him, and he was transported to Rocky Mountain, which is where he currently is now, beating that demon dog to death with a rock, screaming for it to die over and over. He gains 13 experience points for defeating the dog, but he continues smashing it, all the while asking himself, is this his reality now, and what about his life or his parents? He throws the rock away frustrated, slamming his fist on the ground. It wasn't fair. Han just got discharged from the army 3 months ago. He starts tearing up because man hasn't even dated a girl yet. Why did it have to be him? There were a bunch of people who evade military service, yet this bad thing didn't happen to them, it happened to Han. Just look at this face. How can you not feel sorry for the guy? As if to rub salt to injury, the guideline cautions him that the probability of him surviving Latna with his current abilities is 5%. Han just laughs it off in a daze. This was really testing his last bit of sanity. Not stopping there, the guideline asks him if he would like to admit defeat and die. He swats the guideline away, asking if he commits suicide here, are they going to send him home? But after thinking about it calmly, he realized that no one would go through this much effort to kidnap someone, send them to another world, and send them home when they commit suicide. Whether he likes it or not, if he dies, it's probably the end. Han picks himself up and with determination on his face decides he just needs to concentrate on surviving and finding a way out of here. With that determination, the guideline confirms his will for survival and combat ability is activated for our boy. He is then asked to select a class. Looking at the available classes, he sees the warrior class, a close-range fighter who uses a variety of martial arts. Thinking about it, Han comes to the conclusion that it might be fun playing such a class in video games, but in reality you won't want to be anywhere near monsters, meaning long-distance combat is the safest. There's a wizard class, a long-ranged attacker that uses powerful magic. He decides he will choose this class. But unfortunately, his faulty guideline beeps, telling him his selection is rejected because he lacks the necessary talent for being a wizard. Han is shocked that even in this world a person's talent matters. With his confidence taking a hit, Han then decides he will be a magic swordsman, but he is also rejected from this class as well. Thirdly, he tries to be a healer, thinking he'll be a priest and stay far from combat, but yet again he is rejected, although at this point, he knew it was coming. Finally, with no other choice, he selects the warrior class, but he cries inside when the guide congratulates him for choosing the warrior class because man didn't choose this at all, it was forced on him. Next, he is asked to choose his weapon. He decides it's no use crying over spilt milk. Long range is still the best, so he chooses the long spear. In this matter, Hanbin Ryu will not compromise. A sword drops in front of his feet, and the guideline from hell tells him he has selected the long sword as his basic weapon. He tries to tell it that he chose the spear, not the sword, but the guide starts having a fit and then it just disappears. It is then that Han remembers hearing something about an error in his guideline. He almost pulls his hair out in frustration. On top of everything else, this guideline has errors. Han doesn't like that he was just manipulated and kidnapped against his will, but he hates dying even more. He picks up the sword thinking at least it's better than a rock. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Hanbin's unending hellish life of leveling up began. He raises the sword, but it's too heavy for him, and it almost causes him to fall on his back, but he's able to catch himself. He tries to swing it again, but falls flat on his face. My man just lays there thinking it's gonna be a long journey. 7 days later, Han was starting to notice a few things. Firstly, he's always fighting demon dogs. Secondly, the dogs always seem to level up with him. Not only that, but the demon dogs were getting used to his fighting style, same way he was getting used to theirs. For example, after he swings his heavy sword, they use that opportunity to rush in and attack him. He tries to slice its head off, but the dog jumps back, avoiding the blow, and Han wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but it seemed like the dog was snickering at him. It then used this chance to jump at him, knowing that it will take him a while to bring up the heavy sword. However, it didn't know that Han had acquired a new skill. Raising his sword just up to his waist, he activated the skill stab and managed to run the dog through. He gained plus 22 experience points from this. Han gained the skill when he reached level 2. It just appeared on his guide, and using it came as naturally as breathing. He also used the guidelines info. He was able to see that the demon dog meat was safe to eat once cooked, and their blood contained water and was safe to drink. As strange as it was, demon dog meat could actually be considered the perfect food. Thinking back to his time in the Bright Dimension, Han wonders where the other candidates went. He thought he'd find them here, but he is all alone, except for the dogs. The guide tells him after reaching level 5, he can leave Rocky Mountain and join the other candidates. Rocky Mountain was the starting zone, a safe zone where only monsters that are in the player's level spawn. This is to reduce the risk of candidates dying and helps build their strength efficiently. The guide tells him to quickly meet up with the other candidates to increase his chances of success, and that once he reaches level 20, he can complete the Latna dimension and travel to the Latna continent. Han screams, only now realizing that this place is for people to get to level 5. It's a newbie hunting ground. Only when he reaches level 5 will he leave this place and go to the next area and work with other candidates till level 20. Only after level 20 will he be transported to Latna, the real continent, where the real battle begins. He tries to ask the guide what he's supposed to do on the Latna continent, but the guide has a seizure. Even with the errors, this was still valuable information for him. It also confirms that the demon dogs are getting stronger with him. But he has no info on how to get home, so the plan is to meet up with others and gain more info from them. After this, Han went around hunting demon dogs. He wanted to reach level 5 as soon as possible so he can get out of here. The demon dogs were leveling up as he was, so each time he barely won the fights. But he kept on grinding, gaining XP, leveling up, and gaining new skills. The demon dogs were really getting tougher and tougher. Han started falling into a pattern of fighting, getting hurt, killing, and eating the dogs, sleeping, fighting, getting hurt, killing, eating, over and over again. There's this one fight where the dog reminded me of WWE. It speared him and man went flying hard, and even though he was skating with his shoulder blades, my man was able to flip around and stop the momentum with his bare hands, like with his fingertips. I mean, just look at that. Anyway, the dog followed this up with a giant leap, not letting Han catch his breath. It wanted to bite his head off, but Han just picked up dirt with his hand, working those obviously burning fingertips even more. He threw the dirt on the dog's eyes, temporarily blinding it while also positioning himself behind it. By the time the dog turned around, it was already over. Han used horizontal slash to decapitate it. With this last fight, he had finally done it. He was currently level 4, and the fight gave him enough experience to gain a level. Han was over the moon. Finally, it was time to leave this rocky mountain. This was on his 27th day in this world, and during this time he had learned 3 skills: stab, horizontal, and vertical slashes. Not only that, but the increase in his stats had an effect on his body as well. Han was proud. The sword that was so heavy and caused him to fall all over just by swinging it before was now as light as a feather. He checks the guide again, but it had one of its seizures again. Instead of leveling up to 5, the guide levels him down to 1. Han's soul immediately left him after seeing this. Dude literally became pale. This man needs to do a cleansing ritual. The way he's so unlucky is insane. Like it's actually criminal to be this unlucky. Anyway, after a moment, man shakes the shock off and tells himself that the guideline must be spazzing out again. It's just a message error, so he decides to check his stats. And yes, they are back to level 1, but on the bright side, he retained all 3 of his skills. Han loses it again after seeing he's really level 1. He screams his lungs off. He then takes a second to calm himself again, and upon opening the additional stats window, he sees that his stats have not actually reset. They are still there. It's just his level that went down. He tried to stay positive and looked at the situation optimistically at first. He reasoned that since this was a safe zone, demon dogs would go back to level 1 too, and so it would be easy for him to level back up because even though he's level 1, he's got the stats of a level 5. This was going to be amazing, he told himself, but unfortunately with his luck, he was very wrong. Yes, the dogs were back to level 1, but just like him, they got stronger regardless of their level. I guess this is actually in line with the rules of this place if we think about it. It said this zone spawns monsters that correspond to the abilities of the candidate. It doesn't say monsters that are the same level as the candidate. Han has abilities of a level 5 and so do the dogs. Anyways, things never got easier. He put his life on the line with every fight and sadly the cycle continued. He went from level 4 to 1 every time the guide would have an error when he reached level 5. Han never lost hope. Every time he reached level 4, he kept believing that this time it will surely work. He continued butchering demon dog after demon dog, hoping just once, pleading with anyone to just once let him reach level 5. After countless times of the same thing over and over, Han finally lost it, screaming out in frustration, but no one was there to hear him, only his faulty guide. He had an on and off relationship with depression for years. Like, look at this demon dog here. It's got 3 heads and you telling me this is a level 1 demon dog. There was nothing else for Han to do but slice all 3 heads off. This was his routine. He killed the dogs that kept getting stronger and kept on checking his stats. It was very sad at this point. He smiled weakly. He only needed 77 more points to reach level 5. He told himself that he'd for sure be able to do it this time. It was lucky number 7 after all. It was now 7 years since Han arrived on this world and doing this endless dance of constantly going from level 4 to 1. He even made a spot where he threw the corpses, while the ones he wasn't eating were using. He noticed that candidates never age. His looks had not changed much from the first day he arrived. He was buff and dirty for sure, but he never aged. He had a somewhat fast recovery rate, light wounds healed in a day. Even though when his level goes down to 1, he has to keep his stats, there was a downside. Since he couldn't level up, he hasn't been able to learn new skills. He still only has 3 skills. A giant skeletal dog shows up. It lets out a loud demonic roar. This would have scared Han a few years ago, but now it's just the norm. He just tells the dog to hold its horse as he's coming. He thinks to himself that the dogs have gotten stronger just as he has, and even though the system said this area was made to help candidates get stronger, it's more like it was created to kill them, and when you look at it like that, could this place even be called a safe zone? But to be honest, it didn't really matter to him at all. It was really all the same, and you can see right here that this place has done a number on his mental health. Anyway, we take a break from Hanbin and switch to the mysterious beings that put him here, and for a lack of a better word, we are going to refer to him as God's technician. Anyway, the technician has just finished installing guidelines on new candidates and activating the 5th virtual world, Latna. Now that it's the 5th generation, the technician thinks he's gotten used to how to do this. He says that the previous worlds took about a year at most to clear. He hopes there's some capable candidates in this 5th group. As he's leaving, he pauses, noticing something. It's a past world. He wonders if it was thrown away or broken. The technician gets nervous about seeing what's inside this world, but he eventually looks. It's our boy Hanbin. Back to Han, who almost clicked the suicide button while dreaming. Fortunately, he woke up in time before he killed himself. He's been doing nothing but killing demon dogs for the last 10 years. A bit depressed, he watches as his level resets from 4 back to 1. Clutching his head as if holding on to the last bit of sanity he has left, he thinks to himself that all he's done in the last 10 years is not die, but he wonders if this can even be called living. He seriously considered pressing the suicide button, and I have to commend his resolve here. Man has held out for 10 years alone with no one to talk to, and his only company is demon dogs that only want to murder him. Luckily, this time they saved him by arriving and snapping him out of his depression and dismissing the guideline window. Hanbin appreciates the interruption. He's thought about ending his life countless times over the years, but even if he dies, there's no guarantee that he'll be able to go back home. Unfortunately, it's gotten to a point where for each positive thought, there's an accompanying negative one. He wonders, even if he can't get home, would it be better to just die than keep living this way? Picking up his sword, he decides if he's going to die, then it's better to take one more damn dog down. Luckily, Han didn't die that day and more time passed, but after 10 years, the man stopped counting, and I can't say I blame him. At this point, he wasn't sure how much time had passed. It could have been 5 or 7, who knows. To combat the depression, he found some hobbies. He got good at crafting miniature figurines of the dogs. He even learned how to fix his sword. The man even built himself a house and devoted himself to living every day, which was getting harder than fighting the demon dogs. He had found some kind of peace after all these years, and the weather was nice. Well, it was always nice. It never changed. There was no sun, just a red sky, but most importantly, Hanbin was no longer filled with rage. Just like that, he had jinxed it all. A demon dog shows up and steps on his house. The dog is huge and loud. I'm not sure how he didn't hear it coming. Anyway, Han just stands there at a loss for words, watching as a huge paw swipe comes at him. It connects and sends him flying and smashes on a huge rock some distance away. The dog grins, seeing Han's blood splatter all over the rock, but when the dust clears, it turns out that's its hand splattered on the rock. In those few moments before the attack connected, Han had managed to somehow tear its hand off with his bare hands. You can tell he didn't use his sword because it was still on his back. All the calmness and peace he had found was gone. It had taken him 3 years to build that house, and this dog had demolished it in an instant. Han was livid. These days, all of his opponents were these huge loud dogs that he somehow didn't hear coming, and to make things worse, they didn't even taste good. With all that said, Han had picked up on an attack pattern when it came to the dogs. They always seemed to open the fight with a melee attack. This demon dog, though, changes things up. It inhales a big breath of air and uses the special skill Dragon's Breath. This surprises Han a bit. They don't usually open with a special move. Their fire was majestic, and the spell had a huge area of effect and was impossible for Han to dodge, so all he could do was brace himself and block it. The dog is surprised that Han is still standing. It then charges up multiple attacks, but Han already knows about this. Whenever the demon dogs are surprised, they cast lightning, light, and fire spells at the same time. The spells are too fast for Han to dodge, and they really hurt, so instead this Giga Chad uses his sword on the ground and creates an earth wall to block the spells. Then he slices through that wall and launches himself at them, wrapping it up with his special skill. Keep in mind, Han can't learn new skills since he hasn't been leveling up, so he only has his 3 skills, but with the hundreds, the thousands, and tens of thousands of times he's used them, he's learned to use all 3 skills at once. The true Chad in succession uses stab, horizontal, and vertical slash. This, ladies and gentlemen, is cross-impact triple skill attack, and while it's not a real skill, not a single monster has survived after being hit by it. And with that, Han survives another day. Back with God's technician again after he found Han was still in a past world. He remembers that Han is the one who got an error during that one time. He wonders why Han is still there, and upon looking at the location, it says Saga Latna. Currently, the 5th generation is in Latna. The 4th generation was in Lohar Latna, meaning Han was in the 3rd generation, which started 22 years ago. Man has been stuck on Rocky Mountain for 22 damn years with no one to talk to and didn't kill himself. This speaks to how strong his mental fortitude is. This was a screw-up no matter how the technician looked at it. And if his boss found out, then he'd be in trouble, and he can't kill Han also for some reason. He checks Han's stats, seeing that he's just level 4 and the stats are all crap. He wonders how the hell Han survived for 22 years. This was actually a good thing for the technician, and being so weak gives the technician an easy way to deal with him. We again switch to Han eating his latest prey. He muses that even though it's always like this, he's actually gotten pretty good at reaching level 4. He decides to check his stats after his victory. The window opens up and the stats are as bad as what you can expect from a level 4. However, Han gives the command to open additional stats, and there it was, an additional of over 1,000 points to almost each and every one of his attributes. Hanbin Ryu was a wolf in sheep's clothing. This man was a beast. He wonders how strong that last dog was, but he dismisses the thought. It didn't matter. He'll still be level 4 regardless. Now that he's alone again, the depression starts creeping in. He thinks to himself he wants to eat something delicious and meet other people, and how long does he have to live like this? How much long does he have to continue living? His thoughts are interrupted by a loud explosion in the sky. Han has no idea what this is, but this is the solution the technician chose: to erase all records of Han and end the Saga Latna dimension, and thereby sending Han to the Latna continent. The technician reasons that Han as a level 4 will just die immediately there. Han watches as a beam of light starts building up in the sky and then shoots at the ground, piercing into its core. Han fell into it, no idea what's happening, but he did know that the tutorial was finally over all of the sudden. Finally, we see a blue sky and a huge thunderbolt crackling loudly and hitting the ground. The noise wakes up a sleeping beast. Annoyed, the beast wonders if the candidates don't tire of arriving like this. It screams angrily at whoever it is that disturbed its slumber, calling the candidates alien devils. The Sword King's eyes are wide with disbelief, and mine are too. You've been watching all this time and still haven't hit the sub button. Please support the channel by clicking the like and sub button. It would really help me out. Anyway, at some point the Sword King had started to believe that the world he was in was reality, and right now, looking at the blue sky, he can't believe it. That bright red sky where the sun neither rises nor sets was actually gone. For 22 years, he had thought that was the real world. He jumps up and stands on the tallest tree. He still can't believe it. His eyes sparkle with joy for the first time in forever. That hellish, barren, rocky landscape is finally no more. He takes a giant leap, laughing maniacally, throwing himself at the water, making a huge splash. The monster had finally arrived on the Latna continent. The technician believes he solved his issue. He has erased all record of Han, and now Han will disappear and die in the Latna continent. But he has no idea what beast he has unleashed. And this is where we end the first part of the story. Please remember, this is part of several stories I'm trying out on the channel. Please check out the others that are being recommended to you right now. I want to see which one gets more attention, and I will continue with that one. I will continue all stories, but I will put more focus on the one that gets the most attraction. As always, you're watching the Snapshot, and I'll see you next time.